What's going on? Boys, thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. We're going to try to make this a quick one. 2 sections. First section, ASPD Stigma, the way other people stigmatize them and the way they stigmatize themselves, and then maybe some other semi-related stuff. I went back into research mode, and I made one of the worst mistakes you can make, which is getting information about X from Y. The best information you'll get is never from some big popular source. An X talking about a Y. And that goes for me too, despite my not having clout. If you want to know anything, you need to figure it out yourself. Pull it out of the horse's mouth, and out of many horses' mouths. That Sam Vaknin dude really started getting under my skin with his fucking German head and voice. You watch him, you watch people like him, and you begin to wonder how many of these people they've spoken to. If they have any hands dirty experience with any of them. Because there are 3 ways popular sources like these will both convince you and then stigmatize or make a stigma worse, which by itself I don't care, or rather I wouldn't care, but the issue is when you're studying something that is stigmatized, gathering information becomes a lot harder because the stigma becomes the narrative. And even in these cases, when you try to go get information out of horses' mouths, the horses often believe the narrative also. It's hard to get uncorrupted data. And why do people believe these narratives, buy into these stigmas? Because everything is aesthetics. As an example, let's think about intellectual. Intellectual is an aesthetic. And it's a potent aesthetic because when a person gets classified as an intellectual, or they promote themselves as an intellectual and people buy it, the aesthetic gets equated with correctness. And that's not the case. Intellectual is an aesthetic people adopt when they want to feel right. That's why you'll get these people presenting themselves all in a similar way and saying similar things. It's a self-reinforcing loop. Because people don't care about information. What they want is security, and usually that's security from an enemy, perceived or real. That's one of the reasons, even as these people play up how good they are, how kind they are, how empathetic and knowledgeable they are, there is always some enemy that they are dehumanizing and trying to beat. And you know me, I love a good amount of dehumanization, but dehumanization is a weapon. You pull it out in situations you'd need a weapon. If you're researching, you don't need a weapon, usually. And it was making me sick watching these retards talk extensively about how to play, how to beat sociopaths and other people like them. I mean, let's say they are all like that. Your answer is to try to put yourself down on their level and play their own games with them. This is junk food for the weak and the spurned who can't figure out how to defend themselves for themselves, can't figure out how to research, don't want to. They want a blankie. A blankie that forfeits their opportunity to learn something for other people to learn things too, because they corrupt the data in the process, and they make my job harder, and they make life difficult for people they don't even understand. But the worst part of all of it is, usually within this information, within these shitty people, there are fragments of useful information. But even when you find these fragments of useful information, you have 2 troubles and questions. One, how much of this is being spun to support the stigma and the narrative? And 2, in what way does this person who's giving you this fragment understand what they're telling you? Did they get this out of a book? Did they get this from somebody else? Did they get it from personal experience? Usually not, in the latter case. And these fragments are even worse because they contribute to the stigma, which I'll say again is bad for our purposes because it makes data collection harder. How does it make data collection harder? These fragments will point you in the wrong direction if you take them at face value, and even if you try to analyze them a little bit more. Most of the time, these fragments, you can smell usefulness on them, but they will not agree whatsoever with the foundation you've built up using your field research. So it's like getting a puzzle piece all crusted up with shit, and you're trying to shove it into the puzzle as it is. And if you do that, that fucks up a lot of things. So whenever you're doing anything like this, the point to remember is you should keep your eye out for these fragments, but you should use them only as pointers. Let them inform small aspects of your research, not large aspects of your research, and certainly don't try to shove them into your understanding, because if you do that, most of your understanding will fall apart, and you'll be left with fragments that are not even close to the complete picture you were getting close to. And here's another useful thing for studying people. You know, on this channel we like typology quite a lot. I guess we're going cluster B mode. There's an instinct for people when you're dealing with anything typology or styled after typology, categorization, to understand one sort of people as all people within that sort. And that's not the way it works. At the same time, we aren't all super special, super unique, totally free from limitation, the limitation of category. I think the first thing you need to do is work out what aspect of this sort of person is cemented. Meaning, this section of this sort of person will operate the same way or close to the same way across all sorts of people like this. You do this in typology. That's when you need to start, or after you've done that, you begin mapping out zones of variability. This is how, why, and where people with the same type or with the same disorder can be very different from one another. And in that variability is an opportunity to find out, or better to understand, the way the cemented parts work. But the reason this is important, aside from gathering better data, is also to fight stigma. Again, not because you care what these people get thought of or what they think about themselves, but to keep the information clean. It's vital to remember you are not immune to propaganda. And everyone is propagandizing at you at all times, and often for reasons you could never guess. So when you're studying anything, but especially people, go to the horse's mouth and also be aware of what that horse has been fed, or what they might want you to think about horseness. Now, to get more specific to the ASPD stigma, the sociopath stigma, the narrative is sociopaths are monstrous, and they're all monstrous in all the same ways. And the only way you can interact with them is to beat them at their own game, don't you know? Fucking dummies. And sociopaths, many of them will feed you this stigma themselves. Why is that? I think it's because they're deeply concerned with their own identities, across the board. You remember the kid in middle school who took great pains and probably annoyed you in trying to make you think he was cool? I was one of them. There is a desperation to that, trying to convince other people of their or your identities, your ideas about yourself. Desperate. And that's something I'm finding is the case in all the sociopaths I've dealt with so far. They will all try to convince you of their ideas about themselves, and when they do this, whether it's positive or negative, There is a quiet desperation to it, and I think it's because they don't know themselves. Once again, most of them will get pretty clear ideas about what they are, but they will struggle to know who they are. So, why do some of them adopt this stigma or adopt any other number of identities? Identities that define them, give them some structure, both internally and in the world, which is why they're trying so hard to convince you of what they think they are. But we're talking specifically about this popular sociopath, dangerous nemesis stigma. I think they adopt it for the same reason people like villains, anti-heroes. It's its own blankie. It's a desire to feel powerful, it's a desire to feel cool. I think it's also an effort to cope with this separation from people, which I'm not sure how that works totally yet, or how it works across types, but that does seem to bug them. And I also wonder if part of it isn't a bad publicity, or there's no such thing as bad publicity thing. Negative validation is still a form of validation. The issue is what they project is usually very different from the way they behave, and also they fall short of their projections. In this investigation, most present themselves as predatory, as monstrous, and this actually works very similarly to the way stigmas work, or these grifter types work we were talking about in the beginning, because there are fragments of truth in that. But the issue is they are selling themselves short, they are allowing themselves to be sold short, and they're trying to get you to sell them short. And I've been thinking about why they do that. Because again, what they think about themselves, what they want people to think about them, how they feel, none of those things necessarily matter, but the key issue we're dealing with is that fucks up the data. I think it's an effort to keep control of something. Not to acknowledge their limitations, not to acknowledge their shortcomings, their failings, their weaknesses, their lack of agency. Nobody wants to confront or be confronted with parts of themselves they are afraid of. Again, not in the traditional fear way, but I think more in an existential way, in a way that you've now been made aware of something you can't do anything about. Something you learn studying typology very quickly is nobody wants to hear anything bad about themselves. And in fact, well, it's funny, sociopaths are tricky in this, because they'll try to feed you things they think you would think are bad about them, so you'll form your negative opinion, but they don't actually care about. But they have their own demons they do care about hiding inside them. So when sociopaths are stigmatizing themselves, it is a defensive psyop. I don't think they like a metaphorical someone being in their metaphorical room when there is a metaphorical skeleton in the closet. The issue is, I don't know what skeleton would be in their closet. I don't know what they would perceive to be a skeleton. Frankly, at the moment, I don't feel like I'm close, but the way some of them act has me suspicious. But again, I don't feel like I'm anywhere close to anything. And the irritating thing about all of them, all of you, it seems like most of them think they're clever. Which is even more obnoxious because with some of them, I do feel like we are approaching an understanding of something. But I don't know what that something is. I don't know why it would be important. And I don't know why that would be a bad thing. And trying to put it into words, the closest I can get to imagining what this thing we're getting close to would be is like an aerosol of that chronic humanity. I don't think we're going to find a singularity. I don't think we're going to find any smoking guns or anything like that, or even pieces of evidence. It's more like they exist as a vibe, or they can be understood as a vibe, And that's what we're getting closer to. And that feels important. Maybe not something one would need to defend themselves from or lead people away from. But this is what I mean by keeping the data clear, why these stigmas are make things so much more difficult, is I don't think you would get close to this if all you did was watch videos about them or listening to some fucking weird-headed German dickhead teach you how to play sociopath mind games. Which is another thing, by the way. Got this from a YouTube comment, I don't remember where it was, but it's a sentiment we've echoed before, but he really nailed it. Anytime anyone promises you a solution to anything, especially quick fixes, be careful. And that's right. You should be careful. So to wrap up the stigma segment, get your hands dirty, trust only what your hands make, and use your ears but trust your nose. It's frustrating sometimes the way your nose is the only thing you can trust. Especially when you know your nose is not infallible. But additionally, with that, people of X group are never what people of Y group say they are, and also people of X group are rarely what people of X group say they are. I haven't worked out totally what sociopaths are yet, or why they're important in the way I feel they are, but they aren't monsters, at least in the ways or to the extent they're presented to be, the way they present themselves to be. And they're probably also not any number of other things they present themselves to be. You have a lot of work to do. Trust nobody. Now, on to the second segment. If you're done with the strictly sociopath stuff, you can head out. Remember to like and subscribe, but don't comment. Throughout this investigation, people have been on and off to different degrees of intensity, questioning my motives, my methods, my goals, and I don't know why this is difficult for people to understand. Right now, I'm on autopilot. I'm usually on autopilot, because flying manually usually ends poorly. I am doing things because they seem like the things to do. Now, I can have lots of thoughts about the thing that I need to be doing, or desires with the things I need to be doing, but this is righteousness. We've been talking about this almost since the beginning. You do because you feel guided to do. That's my motive. Well, it's not all my motive. That's my method. That's part of my motive. My real motive is in doing what I'm supposed to do, am guided to do, to see whatever I am being guided to see, or to build whatever I'm being guided to build, but there is a location, this is a big journey, I have no idea where we're going or why we're going there, but the end point, my motive, is to get to where I am being guided to get to. And I recognize that can seem confusing to people, because I'll say what I say and what I do won't line up. A lot of things won't make sense. Lots of contradictions, lines of thinking that seem to start and to stop out of nowhere for no reason. There is a method to all this, but it's not my method. I strive to be the arbiter of whatever this will is. So when I explain something to you and it doesn't make sense, what I've just told you are my thoughts about what I'm doing. That's not why I'm doing what I'm doing, or to what end I'm doing what I'm doing. People keep giving me their opinions about this woman. I don't know. I have no earthly idea. All I know is that this is what I need to be doing, and the outcome will be whatever the outcome is supposed to be. I'm so fried on all this, I'm not thinking about it anymore. Well, I am thinking about it, but not in an agency or agententious way. I am letting it happen. it feels like I am host to some transformation. I'll do what I'm supposed to do, and what should happen will happen. What I don't understand is why this confuses people so much. Do you live your life with no intuition? Have you not reached a point you know you are useless, you're worthless, you're helpless, you have no agency, and the only way to live anything resembling a fulfilling life is to host this will using your intuition? Have you not gotten to that point yet? If you haven't, that's fine, but if you don't like it, go somewhere else. Go be involved with people with plans who promise you solutions to things and enjoy it. I'll never understand people who have zero conception of this guiding will thing I'm talking about. How do you get to any stage in life and believe anything is just one thing? Or that things are connected in a way your human mind will accept? We'll do what we're supposed to do, we'll get where we're supposed to get, and hopefully it'll be good and exciting. But if it's not, then it's not supposed to be. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.